I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. Well, on March 1st, he made history as becoming the first Asian American to hold the position of Chief of the Los Angeles Police Department. I am delighted to be joined today by the 58th Chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, the Interim Chief, Dominic Choi. So great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
All right, we sort of have to clarify what it means to be the Interim Chief. So as Interim Chief, you are taking over for retiring Chief Michael Moore. What are the parameters of what that means and what you can do?
Well, the parameters really are just the length of time that I'm in this position.
Okay.
As far as my ability and authority to run the organization, lead the organization, it's the same as any, I'll call it permanent chief or long-term chief, five-term chief, five-year chief. I can make decisions on command staff movement, hiring, our marketing efforts, our crime-fighting strategies, the day-to-day operations, all that is under my purview.
So you said you're not going to make any big changes, just because, you know, of the position that you're in right now, but you could if you wanted to, if you really wanted to shake things up. As interim chief, as you just said, the position is yours. You could do anything you wanted. You could, you know, completely change the uniforms to purple.
I could. Obviously, I'm choosing not to do that. You know, part of my priorities is to create stability in the organization during this interim period, not to stir it up.
Okay. So. All right. And why did you? I mean, it's a big position. It's a very tumultuous position at times, and a very challenging position at times. What made you want to actually, you know, take on this role?
I think it just boils down to there was a need in the organization for somebody to fill that gap, and I felt that I was the appropriate person to fill that gap, and so I agreed to put in my name in the hat for this process, and I was honored and fortunate enough to be selected for it. I know what your next question is and why I didn't put in for the permanent spot. Well, I could have. I had two choices. I knew up front that if I put in for the interim spot, I wasn't eligible for the permanent spot. I just made a personal decision. I have a timeline for my service here at LAPD, and the interim position fell within that timeline, and so that's what I chose to pursue.
So let's go ahead and clarify that, because I mean, yes, I know what you're going to do, but you are not eligible because there's law that says that you cannot be eligible.
It's not law.
It's not law.
It's a decision. It's a criteria that was agreed upon prior to anyone that was going to put their name in the hat for the interim position, that they wouldn't be putting. It was an agreed upon parameter, and that we all agreed to. So I'm not going to put my name in the hat.
So is the fact that you have been with the LAPD, you know, 27 plus, almost 28 years right now, is it because of the time in which you've already invested that you made this decision? Or was it just you felt that this was a right fit, or your wife said, don't you dare? I mean, you know, what were some of the things?
So I will tell you this. So I have a timeline of about 4 years to finish my career with LAPD.
Okay.
So it's not the 5-year chief term that made me not put in for it. No chief comes into one term thinking they want to be a one-term chief, in my opinion.
No.
So now I would be thinking that I need to commit 10 years. I mean, some do 6, 7 years, like Chief Moore, Charlie Beck, right? But I wasn't committed to doing up to 10 more years. I had already made promises and plans with my wife and kids that I would be spending more time at home after the 4-year term period. And I just wanted to be true to that decision. And you know, when I asked my wife, what do you think about the interim position, she looked at me like I was crazy, because I have never had that conversation, and I always said, don't worry, in those 4, I'm going to be done and we're going to go vacation. And so, but she gave in and she said, go ahead, I support you, as long as it doesn't extend your term into when you're going to leave. And I said, no, I'm still looking at about 4 years.
So what was the actual, when you were told? I mean, how is... It's because it's an interesting process that nobody gets to really experience. So I know I'm asking rather pedantic questions, but, you know, making the decision to do it, and then does Mayor Bass just call you? Did you have any idea in advance? What happens?
So I didn't know the process, but ultimately the way it played out is everybody had to turn in a resume. We had an actual formal interview, which was surprising. I thought it was a
like
conversation,
a job interview.
but it was absolutely a job interview. Everybody had questions aligned, and after that, they notified some people, I guess, to move on to the next step. I had to do a final interview the day before, the day of that commission that it was announced, the day of the press conference. Commission still had not made a decision because they had to vote and had to be unanimous, and they still hadn't voted because they only get together on Tuesdays, right? Police Commission. And so that Tuesday they voted for me, and then they notified me, and then an hour later I was across the street doing a press conference with the mayor.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
Okay. And that must have been, you know, quite rewarding, the fact that you were unanimously voted in and, you know, pretty straightforward. And then do you spend time with former Chief Moore in order to understand the rules and regs of your position and what your responsibilities are? Or are you just like, okay, here are the keys. Thanks, Dominic. We'll see you later.
Well, no, what the transition between Michael Moore and myself was great, and it's still continuing. I still talk to him whenever I need to talk to him. If I need to bounce something off him or ask him, you know, what's going on with this project, I can call him anytime. He's been great about that. The benefit that I've had is over the past 6 years, 5 years, I was his chief of staff, and then I was the director of support services, which a lot of command officers or staff officers don't get to experience, and it's the non-policing side of police work, right? It's the budget, it's hiring, it's the training, it's our custody services, our jails, all these things that a traditional command officer in policing wouldn't experience. So I had that experience. I was also the homeless coordinator at one point. I was the department risk manager at one point, and then recently I got transferred over to Office of Operations, which is all of our patrol and detective personnel. So, and that's about almost 6,000 personnel out of a 9,000 personnel department. So I really got to see the workings of the organization under the guidance and supervision, if you will, of Chief Michael Moore. And so I think I was a natural fit.
I agree. I was going to say, you know, it sounds like, you know, you have all the job experience before you actually had the job, so it's not surprising that you were unanimously voted in. And then, of course, we do have a new mayor, well, slightly new mayor. I mean, she's been around for a bit, but so what is your relationship with her? Because she works with you. She, you know, you work together quite well.
Our relationship has been great. She's been absolutely supportive of the commission's decision, obviously. We've met a few times already. We continue to meet on a regular basis. You know, she asked that I be collaborative and communicate openly and frequently with her, and we've done that. So it's been a great relationship. I'm looking forward to continue to work with her closely throughout my interim period while they select a new chief. And
other political leaders in the city that obviously have a very sincere interest in what happens with the LAPD. There were some council members recently that requested a report in terms of costs of the LAPD to sort of have a comprehensive understanding of where the whole department lies and what's happening. And in that report, there was a pretty substantive amount of overtime being spent on some particular districts with some particular office. What did that tell you? You don't have to, you know, make it work, but what did that information provide to you, and what did you read into what the report came out with?
Well, I won't talk specifically about the report itself, but I will talk about overtime.
Okay.
So obviously overtime is a concern to everyone in the city because LAPD out of all the departments has the largest budget by far, right? And overtime is a big piece of our budget. But I will tell you, if you go back to January of 2019, we had 10,103 sworn personnel. As of this Monday, we're at 8,876. That's over 1,100 officers less. We are doing more than ever, not less work. We're doing more work than ever. Now, we've been trying to, what would be the right word, disperse the work through alternative services, through online reporting, those type of things. But still, somebody has to answer the phone. Somebody has to distribute the police reports. So there's still work being done behind the scenes. That overtime shows me that because of our staffing levels, we have to hold people over at end of watch or come in before watch to take care of all these duties. we're at a lower staffing level in patrol, so officers have to stay longer to handle all the radio calls. We have to, by statute, we have to meet a 7-minute response time to our emergency calls. We are well below that, but our non-emergency calls, the time it takes us to get to those calls have been creeping up year after year because of our shortages in staffing. And here's another thing. I understand it's a lot of money, but if you take that overtime and you put it in a bank, meaning you don't pay them cash for working overtime, you put it in a bank, that police officer too, that's making, let's say, $100,000 a year, then retires at a captain level, you've just doubled, tripled the amount you're going to pay out. So you're increasing your liabilities exponentially by putting it in a bank.
Further retirement.
So paying the overtime in a timely manner is actually cost beneficial to the city.
And you're in a bit of an interesting balancing act, because prior to your new term, there's a lot of interest, action, and enthusiasm towards taking some of the responsibility off the LAPD in terms of response to particular types of calls. So, you're kind of in this weird balancing act between have those programs alleviated some of the responsibilities that the LAPD needs to take on, and at the same time have other things filled in that you still need to recruit and have more officers as part of the team.
Absolutely. So primarily, let's homeless related calls or calls involving mental illness. There's a special skill that's needed to properly handle those when no weapon or crime is involved.
Correct.
Right. And LAPD absolutely supports that approach. We know we can't enforce our way out of many things, and we have to have the proper clinicians or service providers respond to certain calls and support that. And we want to develop further resources with those service providers to respond to those calls so we don't have to. So that's the first point. However, at 2 o'clock in the morning, 911, who answers the phone?
Do you still need to increase the amount of personnel that you have within the LAPD to close that gap between 8,000 and 10,000?
Absolutely, and here's why. So if you remember mid to late last year, 2023, you were seeing a lot of these flash mob, flash rob,
smash and grabs,
those type of things. But not the 2 or 3 suspects coming into a store and do that. You were seeing 20, 30, 40, 50 people come in and just mob a store and do these things. We put together an organized retail theft task force, which takes overtime funds, because these officers have other jobs as well, their regular jobs, but you put them in a task force configuration. They work overtime to do that. And from January, I think that task force has made over 35 arrests, identified a bunch of other people. And when's the last time you saw on TV the 30 to 40 people coming into a store? It's really not happening in the city of LA anymore. It may, and it's occasional, but not in the frequency that it has happened. And if you're seeing it outside the city. And I attribute that to the enforcement effort on overtime that we did for the Organized Retail Theft Task Force. So those things, we use overtime to address emerging crime trends, to eradicate and arrest and prosecute.
You bring up an interesting point. I mean, you have been with the department now for 28 years. How have you seen the department change? Obviously, as you just mentioned, there have been adaptations to face a current crisis that is happening with this sort of thing. But how, just in a general overall sense, how have you seen the department shift to adapt to a changing Los Angeles and shift and adapt to what people want their their department to be versus what they felt it was?
So I've seen a lot of change for the better. Positive change. So just our diversity hiring has significantly increased. The technology has increased. We went from having radios where we had to hang them out the car window and go grab them when we need the radio, to now they're on our sides and they're with us everywhere. Body-worn video, digital in-car videos, the way we police, like our Community Safety Partnership Bureau, we never had a whole bureau that was dedicated to community policing, where we find a underserved community, build relationships, help activate that community through programs for youth all the way up to the senior citizens within those communities, and educate so they can support themselves and know how to use city resources. every one of those locations that we've stood up for community safety partnership, I think there's 10 now. There's actually 11, but 10 groups of officers, one supervisor, 10 officers in each of those sites. We just opened up another one here this month, and we have another one opening up in a couple more months. Every one of those sites has seen a dramatic decrease in crime. So the way we police, the way we're building trust and relationships, the transparency after going through the consent decree, the reports that we publish, the way we tracked certain things, I think we're doing a great job in communicating all that information publicly, building that trust, and then that leads to a lower crime rate because we're all working towards the same goal.
So the first thing you said was a more diverse force. What do you think your position now tells people who are potentially interested in becoming a police officer or have toyed with the idea? What do you think the fact that, because there's been an enormous amount of celebration, well-deserved, of the fact that you're the first Asian American to hold this position. So what do you think that says out loud, and how does that make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel great to represent not just Korean Americans or Asian Americans, but all minority groups, that anything's possible. I never dreamed I'd be sitting in this position. So I think with some hard work, some good luck, and some dedication, anything's possible. I think people see me not as an Korean American role model, but as a minority role model, that anyone can work hard and achieve what they need to or what they want to at LAPD. And I will tell you, we have so much. We're a large organization with so many different job descriptions. You can find something that you're really going to enjoy in this department.
Did you face any hurdles as a minority police officer on your course? And you don't have to details, but just in general.
You know, I'm very lucky to say I personally have not. I will say that I may be a little more unique, although my parents were born in Korea and immigrated here, and I was born here. I really, my experience as a minority, I think, was a little bit limited. I didn't experience some of the challenges or conflict or issues that some of my counterparts that were minorities had expressed to me. I've heard about them, but I didn't personally experience many of them. Nothing that held me back in my career.
So obviously, you are not going to make everybody wear purple, but you do have priorities, and I imagine that some of the priorities are imperative in mostly include recruiting. So how are you kind of strategizing? You mentioned there's a place for everybody. It doesn't matter what it is that you want to do. There's a position. But so what are your strategies to engage people in a potential career with the LAPD?
Sure. So there's three things I want to focus on during this interim period, and obviously it's crime reduction and community engagement, and those two things go hand in hand. Because we need our communities to be our partners, our eyes and ears, and with that partnership, we can reduce crime together. So that's number one. And for a public safety agency, I think crime reduction and community engagement has to be their first priority. Second priority, like you mentioned, was recruitment and retention, not just hiring, but retaining those people that we have. In the past few years, our attrition level or our retirements, I'll call them retirements, or just people leaving the organization, because we've had a lot of people from the 2 to 10 year mark without vesting in a pension leave the organization. That's unusual. We haven't seen that in the past. Could be a bunch of reasons, because normally on their paperwork they just put personal reasons, but we know a lot of them are going to other agencies, right? So I want to focus on retention as well as our hiring. On a positive note, this year so far, our attrition level shows a decrease, so more people are staying. And it's just the beginning of the year, but we do see that. But also in January, we had 1,200, almost 1,300 new applications for LAPD. That's the highest number of applications one month we've seen in over 2 years. So we're starting off the year right. I'm waiting to see what the February numbers are. But I think we've done that through impacting morale, which is my third priority. I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
But you impact morale, you use money wisely to market, create a brand for LAPD again. I'll tell you, when I came on the job, I only applied to LAPD, and if I wasn't going to be an LAPD officer, I wasn't going to be a cop.
Because?
I was just infatuated with the LAPD brand. It was the movies, everything was LAPD, it was the best, right? And so I used to be an accountant. I worked for Coopers & Lybrand, a big six accounting firm back then, and I said, well, I want to be a cop, and so if I applied. I don't want, so let me just get to my third priority, and then we can go back to that. So So recruitment and retention, and then lastly, morale and employee wellness. So when you're internally well, when your organization is well, when you're physically healthy inside, you perform better. You do it with more vigor and more excitement, and you treat people better. So if I can increase morale and wellness, that is automatically going to increase our recruitment and hiring, because I believe our officers are #1 recruiters. And right now, not all of them are telling their friends to come join LAPD, and I need them to. And then with that, with an excited workforce that's eager to come to work and excited to see what the next day holds for them, they're going to go out there and engage the community in a positive manner, which is going to ultimately reduce crime. So all of this is intertwined. And so that's my strategy. I know it may seem a little bit pie in the sky, but I think that's what it's going to take.
Well, I mean, if you don't have a dream, you won't actually ever fulfill a dream. So we have to kind of go back to the idea of what the LAPD looked like to you as a young man to make such a dramatic shift, and how that could apply to the current LAPD in Los Angeles. I mean, the era of all of those films and television shows that, put a police officer in a position of hero versus a position of what we saw, after the pandemic. It's a completely different realm. So that's kind of a very interesting strategy. How do you visualize that? How do you visualize that opportunity?
Well, there are some opportunities out there to create another LAPD type of show. Like we used to have Life on the Beat years ago. Mm-hmm. But there are opportunities out there that I'm looking into, just as kind of not so much as a Hollywood sensational LAPD, but more of a marketing tool. Mm-hmm. Say, look at all these jobs we have. Look how much fun it is. And I remember coming to work in the middle of summer, and when I was a probationary officer, every day I was excited to come to work to see what the next day held for me, what kind of radio calls I was going to get, who I was going to run into. And I just want the young officers these days to feel the same way. But so maybe creating another show depicting LAPD in a positive light. But I think the biggest part of that is, or biggest part of this morale wellness issue is letting the cops know that we, the leadership team, cares for them, we value them, we know they have a tough job, we know they're understaffed, but they are heroes every day, and recognizing them for that, even if it's just a phone call or an email to say, hey, great job, I saw this arrest, great job, hey, I saw this incident, great job staying out of the use of force. And I tell all my command officers the same thing, like, talk to your people, reward them, let them know that they're doing a good job. I've even said that to our commissioners, to the mayor's office, to our council members. So we need a whole city family to show them that these officers, that we support them, that they're doing good work.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the power of story is pretty profound, and I think that would also not just demonstrate to potential officers or employees of the LAPD, but also to the communities at large, how the community sees the LAPD as not something that's at them or against them or something to be afraid of, but something that's there for them, to protect them and to enhance their existence. So I can see how that you need to change that visibility as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think it's more of a reminder to the officers that the radio calls you're going to, somebody's calling the police there because they're having a crisis. Mm-hmm. They could be in the worst time or lowest point in their life, but that's not the majority of the community that is there to support you. The vast majority, quite frankly, are occupied in their own lives, but silently support everything you're doing and appreciate you being there to create a safe environment for them. And you got to keep talking to them about that. But also, when we have community events, whether it's coffee with a cop or whether it's a community meeting, a town hall meeting, 90% of the people there are there to support. We do have, the reason why we have these meetings so we can hear about issues or concerns, but almost everybody is willing to work with the police hand in hand. They're not there to be against the police. So, and the officers see that.
So when you say that there's something for everybody in the LAPD, what are jobs beyond a beat cop, beyond someone who, what are some of the things that people never even think about that they could potentially do?
We have a dive unit. If you're avid scuba diver, you can go get on the dive unit to go search for evidence that's thrown in the ocean or the lakes or whatever else it may be. We have a mounted unit. We have specialized investigators like abused child unit. We have over 230 different job descriptions. We have our air support unit. You can become a pilot of a helicopter. On the civilian side, we have forensics, our people that take our fingerprint specialists, our polygraph examiners, kind of the CSI stuff all exists. Property officers, we have our custody service officers. We really do have a whole array of different jobs. I mean, if you tell me you wanted it, you would consider something, I could probably find you a job that mirrors that type of work in the LAPD.
Well, I would also imagine, because you said that there is attrition beyond retirement, people leaving for personal reasons, and I am imagining some of the personal reasons are money. So what are the opportunities available to you in working with Mayor Bass to be able to, because there's budgetary issues, as you said, you're pretty pricey as a department, but an imperative one. How are you getting through that?
So that issue...
By the way, by the time we're taping this, you've been on the job for, 2 weeks, so good job.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so this issue of retention because of salary was brought up last year, and even the year before. However, Mayor Bass, when she came into office, recognized that, and Chief Moore spoke to her about that. But our union MOU, Memorandum of Understanding 24, which is our lieutenants and below, which is the vast majority of our sworn personnel, their labor union negotiated with the CAO, City Administrative Officer, and they ratified this MOU to get a significant pay increase to be in parity with the cost of living adjustments other agencies had previously had. That went into effect, and they are now currently getting paid at the higher level. And so I believe that is helping these attrition numbers come down. So that is one of the things that already took place. I personally would like to see some signing bonuses. A lot of agencies have signing bonuses to attract laterals or others to come to the department. That's yet to be seen, but it's something that I would like to pursue. But again, I want to create an environment where finances are only a small portion of your decision. Like I said, when I came on, it was because LAPD was LAPD, not because I quite frankly didn't even know what their salary was. Mm-hmm. But I knew I wanted to go apply to LAPD.
Do you see another force? It doesn't even have to be in the United States. It could be somewhere that kind of stands as a role model to you, because, sometimes it's, instead of reinventing something, it's something, take the good parts of what is already existing somewhere or at something. And do you see a force anywhere that you think LA could, cherry pick some good things from and create?
Well, I've had the opportunity to visit a lot of different agencies, both nationally and internationally, mm-hmm. and from the Korean National Police to the Venice Police Department to mm-hmm. the Italian National Police to the French Police. So I've seen a lot of agencies, and I will tell you that my personal opinion is we are still the best.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
We are always evolving, always looking for change. If you're stagnant, you're falling behind. And that's just been our mantra, and because of that, we've been able to stay ahead of the game, I think, and set the example for us. And we have agencies from around the world calling us to come visit our training facilities to see what we're doing, and so I think that's a testament to what we're doing.
Do you have a clue as to how long you will be able to hold this position? Because I would imagine that there's no real deadline, there's no real date, but what have you been told? How are you counting the days?
Well, I'm not counting the days,
okay.
but when anyone asks, I say roughly 6 months.
Okay.
So if it's less, it's less. If it's more, it's more. But again, like you said, we don't know how many people apply for the permanent spot. We don't know the exact process yet, how they're going to be filtered out. I know that the mayor and the commission would like to have a selection done as soon as possible, but that all depends on how many applicants and the process that they're going to implement.
And most importantly, if people are interested in becoming part of your team, what's the best way for them to find out what's available? And
joinlapd.com.
Okay.
That webpage will give you everything you need to know. We have individual mentors for you to talk to, and I encourage everyone to look at that website.
Well, thank you so much, Chief Choy. It was really nice talking with you. I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.